Hi, this is Brian at Provision Studios, and today I'm going to make a video showing a new piece of studio equipment that I recently purchased. It is the Waves Soundgrid Impact Server. It is a piece of gear that is similar in regard to what the benefits it gives your recording sessions as another piece of gear I have, which is called the Uad Satellite, made by Universal Audio. Both pieces of gear allow you to offload plugins from your computer and basically run them from outside of your central processing unit to give your computer power back to your DAW instead of robbing it when you start putting plugins into a session, whether it's live recording in a studio where you want minimal latency for your artists, or when you're mixing, when you get into larger sessions and you're getting into a higher plug-in counts and your system starts causing audio dropouts and such because your processor can't keep up to your demand of the DAW with the plugins on it. Both the Satellite and the Impact Server by Waves allow you to take your plugins, put them on these pieces of gear that are outside of your CPU, and you still get the power of the plugin without it robbing the processing power of your computer. Alright, so the cool part about the Impact Server is that it runs through a Cat 5 cable or a Cat 6 cable through a network hub. The benefit of this is that you can create multiple systems in one environment. So you could literally have, if you have an area where you have multiple internet hubs, you can have one as your central hub and connect multiple computers to one hub with one Impact server and mix from multiple computers, all sharing the same I/O. This is pretty revolutionary in the way a lot of studios are working nowadays. They are using one server and being able to mix multiple rooms off of the same server. So you're able to use plugins from one centralized location on other computers, and again, be able to use minimal latency on those systems because you're using a server as opposed to your computer CPU. Alright, I'm going to get into a couple examples of how you would use it. I'm also going to show you my setup so you can understand the benefits of it and how it might apply to your studio. Again, the way I use it is just to benefit my environment. Your studio, you might want to use it differently. If you have any questions, the best way to do it would be to contact Waves customer support. You can obviously ask me a question and I'll do my best to answer it, but I'll only be able to answer it in regards to how I use it in my studio, which may not be the same way you would want to use it. Anyway, let's dive in and see what kind of information we can get to you today. Thank you. Alright, so here is the UAD satellite that I have. This is a very good piece of hardware. I use it a lot because I really like UAD plugins. This runs via Firewire, and then I have an adapter right here. This is like a Belkin hub, so I run Firewire into it and then via Thunderbolt into the back of my iMac. Alright, and then here is the Waves Impact Server. So you can hear the fan. I'm going to stop talking so you can hear. That's how loud it is. So this might be something, if you are going to record with it in a live session, you might want to put this in another room, and then via network cable you can connect it into your computer through a hub, so that the fan noise is not, getting into your microphones. Another way to do it would be to turn it off and not use it for recording, but only use it for mixing, which is probably how I'm going to use it. I have a band coming over today, so today will be my first opportunity to run it through its paces with a live band. I'm going to try to get behind it here. So here is your network cable, and again that runs to the back of my iMac, right here, right into my network hub, my network port on the back of my iMac. So that's how it runs. Here is a bit of information. I initially was using a Cat 5e cable. That was 100 feet spool, so I'm sure that had a lot to do with it. It said 75 feet, I think, is the maximum you want to go before you start noticing latency, extreme latency issues. But anyway, Cat 5e is what I was using, and then yesterday I went and bought this network Cat 6 cable, which greatly improved the latency I was incurring in sessions that I was experimenting with. So I would obviously recommend you get a Cat 6 cable as well, and try to minimize your cable length. I think 75 feet is where it says, and I could be wrong with that, but I think 75 feet is the length where it says you will start noticing latency decreasing, or it'll increase because of your cable length. And the benefit of a Cat 6 over a Cat 5 cable is the main benefit is it limits crosstalk. With, if you are using a piece of gear like the Impact Server for audio, obviously you want the best quality you can get. So the 6 would be what you'd want to go with, Cat 6 cable, because you want the most pristine amount of audio you can get going into your device. And my I/O is the Soundcraft Signature 22 multi-track, which connects to my iMac via USB. So this acts as my interface that runs into the server to offload plugins in my session. Alright, I'm going to go into a live screen capture to show you guys some of the stuff on the computer, what it can do. Alright, let's dive in. Alright, so here we are inside of my computer here. This is the SoundGrid Studio software that you set up your Impact Server with. Rack A will be your I/O device. If you have a non-SoundGrid device, which is what I have, you'll select it here. So you'll see local devices, and then you select your your device there. If you have a SoundGrid compatible device, then you would also select that here. This is your through your network hub. This is going to be your software I/O. This is what connects the Impact server to all your I/Os. And then here is your server. So this is the Impact server right here. All right. Here is your processing, your SoundGrid processing information. Here is your sample rate information, and this is your network port. So you can see you have multiple options here. The best way to handle this is to do the auto config option. So you would basically click on the start button here, and it would go into an auto configure. It would look at all of your ports, all of your devices, and it would set everything up for you in advance. That's how I did it. That's the best way to get up and running quickly. All right. The second piece of equipment you will need is this right here, the SoundGrid driver control panel. Again, this is another free. This and the SoundGrid Studio are both free from Waves. You would install it, run it, and you would click enable here. Your native device again is what you would select here. Obviously, I'm using the Soundcraft Signature 22 multi-track console. You set your buffer in Pro Tools here, and then you can see here my status is I have 24 ins, 22 outs, and my streaming has started. So we're all good to go. All right, now to the plugins. If you go to Waves' website, you can see what the latency is for their plugins, which is important if you are wanting to use the Impact server for actual live sessions. Then you want to make sure that you're using plugins that you have zero latency on, so that when someone is singing or playing their instrument, they are not getting any delay from what they're playing to what they're hearing through their monitoring. So you can see here there's several plugins that have zero latency, and pretty useful plugins at that. It's not just plugins that you wouldn't want to use in your session. The F6 floating band dynamic EQ, zero latency. That's an excellent plugin by Waves. GT3 Stompbox, zero latency. Obviously the tuner, zero latency. You got a hybrid H delay and H verb, both zero. Kramer Pi compressor, zero. I mean, that's excellent compressor to put on there. The entire one knob suite from Waves is all at zero latency. The Puichild compressor, zero. Many of the Renaissance suite plugins, the R-Bass, R-EQ, R-Verb, are all zero. So that's pretty cool. V-Comps, VEQ 3 and 4, and the Vitamin Sonic Enhancer. Excellent plugin right here. All zero latency, as well as the Vocal Rider. Anyway, you can go to Waves' website and look those up, and it'll show you what gives you zero latency and what you're going to get latency from. Again, that's not to say you can't use them, but you might want to use the ones that have latency, or that introduce latency more as mixing plugins instead of studio session plugins. All right. Now in Pro Tools, the way that you would have it set up is you would download from Waves' website the Studio Rack plugin. Studio Rack is the plugin that connects Pro Tools to your server. So you can see right here, I have local CPU is the processing that I'm using right now. If I want to get the benefit of offloading my plugins that I add to the studio rack, I want to select the SoundGrid. So there we go. When this is green, that lets you know that you are now using the Impact Server's SoundGrid processing. You are no longer using the CPU's processing power to instantiate plugins. So any plugin I add now to this studio rack is going to be gaining its processing power from my Impact Server. So let's say I use the SSL channel. You can see right here, rack latency is at 0.0 milliseconds. In other words, I have zero latency. I can track through the SSL E channel with zero latency into Pro Tools. I can set up any kind of EQ and compression settings I want through the channel strip, get the sound I want, all with zero latency. Let's say I want to add the Main American tone shaper. See, now all of a sudden I've gone up to 67.3 milliseconds. I have introduced 67.3 milliseconds worth of processing latency because this plugin is not a zero latency studio rack plugin. So as long as you understand that, you'll be good to go. Don't expect there to be zero latency on a plugin that is not going to offer that. So if I remove that plugin, you can see here I'm back to zero latency once again. All right, and that's basically the for the live studio session. That's basically how that's going to work for you. If there's various plugins that you'll find on the website that you'll be able to put on. There's an audio track. Again, zero. I'm still at zero latency. So I got two plugins running, and they're both introducing zero latency into my session. All right. Now let's say you've tracked and you want to start mixing. Now you can start instantiating plugins that do introduce like latency because you are no longer tracking. You're not worried about latency for your monitoring. And again, this is another good feature of the Impact Server. You can get into high plugin counts now without worrying about taxing your computer's CPU. So let me take these off. Let me solo this. That is with, I'm running 4 virtual instruments. That is running Miroslav Philharmonic, Omnisphere, Sample Tank 3, and in another instance of Miroslav Philharmonic. So I'm running 4 virtual instruments, and I'm running the studio rack on my bass track. Alright, so there you go. Again, I'm not trying to advocate that an Impact server is what you need for your studio. It's a new piece of gear I got, and I just wanted to show it to you guys today because I really think that it's going to be very beneficial to me. Not that I was having processing issues, it's just that I've begun to get more and more into Waves plugins. They've been having a lot of their $29 plugin sales, and I've been buying more and more of them because of these sales. So I've been saying to myself, okay, I use a lot of UAD plugins, and I use the Satellite quad as a way to keep those plugins from taking my system's processing power and robbing it. Now, that being said, you can't run UAD plugins without having one of their proprietary DSPs anyway. So in that regard, Waves is different. You don't have to have an Impact server to actually use Waves plugins. But I do like what Waves is doing here. I think the Soundgrid, both for the live and for the studio setting, what it offers for your computer and your ability to record with low latency to zero latency sessions is really beneficial, not just for the artist but for the engineer as well. So again, if you have any questions, please contact Wave Support. You can certainly leave a comment in the video below or email me at bbuck822@gmail.com, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. This is how I use it in my studio environment. There are also ways where you can go about and get actual Soundgrid IOs, which is a much more expensive option. I wanted to use the gear I already had in my studio, which was the Soundcraft Signature console. And you're able to do that without having to go out and buy more expensive gear. So if you think that you might want to give this a try, I would say it's certainly worth the time it'll take for you to set it up and try it out on some of your mixes. I think it's going to be a good improvement to my system. Again, I'm wanting to start using more and more Waves plugins anyway. The bundle I got came with the Impact server and the Horizon bundle. So for the cost of the Impact server, I basically got the Horizon bundle for free, which if you look at the plugins that come with the Horizon bundle, to say that that's free, that's an awesome bonus. Do your due diligence. Go to the website. Go to the several of the communities online that you can run some questions and get some responses and see what everyone's saying. I have noticed that there's not a lot on the Impact server, so I'm probably going to make more videos in the future about this, similar to what I did with the Signature console by Soundcraft, because I really couldn't find a lot of information on it either. but I do want to show the online recording communities what is out there and what they can spend low money on and get high quality with. So anyway, let me know if you guys have any questions or comments. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you very much and have a great weekend. Bye bye now.